Hello and welcome, season 4 of the Let's Talk Wrestling podcast. As always, I am your host, Kelby Bachman, and please give it up for the next guest on the show, Cody Alesch. So, Cody is from Grettinger, Iowa, where he placed second as a junior and fourth as a senior. Cody then went on to compete at Wartburg College, and while there, he lettered 3 times, and the Knights claimed a team title in 1999. After successful head coaching stints at his high school alma mater, as well as Iowa Lakes Community College, Cody and his wife Teresa have started up the Athlete's Mentor. And the Athlete's Mentor is the voice for parents, support for coaches, and guide for athletes to set ambitious goals, overcome obstacles, and achieve peak performance, both in sports and life. They actually recently announced a huge partnership with the Hawkeye Wrestling Academy. And for more information on how you can get involved, or if you just want to check things out, gather more information, visit www.theathletesmentor.com. I will post that link in the show notes for easier access. But with that being said, please sit back, relax, and enjoy Cody Alesch. In the heart of West Union, Iowa, lies a hidden gem in Euphoria Coffee. Owned by local residents Nicole and Shane Havenstreit, they source everything they can from local vendors. From hot and iced drinks, to savory breakfast burritos, to baked goods, to botany tea, and even homemade waffles, Euphoria Coffee is a place your entire family can enjoy. You can find more information at drinkeuphoria.coffee2go.com or visit their Facebook page. And we also have a special gift just for you. Next time you stop in, you can get a free baked good with a $20 purchase. Just mention the Let's Talk Wrestling podcast. Euphoria Coffee. Our purpose is deeper than coffee. They made it to state this past year, didn't they?
Yeah. So my son, it was a crazy year. My son wrestled so he's a freshman in Algona. So my kids go to Bishop Garrigan. So yeah, they've made it. She's a junior, and they made it to state. They won it as a freshman. She played with Audie Crooks, and then my cousin, her cousin. And then last year we made it back to state. We got beat first round, and this year we got beat. We won the first round, then get beat by St. Albert's in the second round.
Okay.
St. Albert's.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so she plays a lot of basketball. She should have been my wrestler, man. She's built like a rock, but she loves basketball. So
yeah. Cool. And then you have so he's a freshman this year.
Yep.
And Algona was good. Did they go to Algona? You said
Yep. So Garrigan doesn't have wrestling, so he goes over and wrestles at Algona.
Okay.
Yep. He was our 6-pounder this year, and he had a pretty good year as freshman. He made it down the state. Kind of had a unique thing happen. He got sick. He got really sick right before district. So about 3 weeks before, he actually was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes 3 days before districts.
Wow.
So it's kind of he made it through, but he was barely, he basically, his body was a wreck. And so he persevered, man, and got through as a freshman, which was good. He had a path to get through, and he got done. But once he got down there, it was pretty rough. His body was just, he could wrestle about 2 minutes, and that was like it.
Mm-hmm.
So so it's been a pretty cool thing, or a pretty shitty thing, but cool thing for him to.
Mm-hmm.
Tuesday, we're in the hospital at the Blanks Hospital, Children's Hospital in Des Moines, and walked out. He was like, "I'm coming back, but this time I'm going to the Wells." 3. I didn't think he'd be able to wrestle, but
yeah,
he got it done enough anyway. So, but we won state duels, and we had a happy individual tournament. But
I was gonna say, we 2A is always just it's kind of. It's the most fun. That's what we grew up. I grew up in Monona at MFL Marmac, and we were in 2A, and that was such a fun. Not saying anything bad about 3A or 1A, but 2A was always a battle between teams. Like you just never knew. It was just like throw them into a hat, pull them out, and see who wins.
A lot more fun when everybody's not chasing for second. Too much parity in 2A right now until somebody climbs up and does it. I guess, but right now it's fun. I mean, it was. State duels, I think we could wrestle that thing 10 times, probably had 8 different champs,
right.
So the dual thing was fun, and in 1A or the individual, we just didn't have a good tournament. But again,
Yeah.
it was anybody's to take, and then you add in the teams that got 3 or 4 horses, and all of a sudden you got like 12 teams that could probably win the darn thing, So it was fun. I mean, it's fun like that, So
For sure. For
yeah,
sure. When you feel like you have a chance, and I'm not saying other teams in 3A or 2A or 1A, excuse me, didn't feel like they have a chance. I'm sure they felt like they could have a chance, but
yeah,
when you have Southeast Polk and Don Bosco, I mean, it's pretty hard to, so when you're in 2A, literally you're like, we could win this thing.
yeah.
So,
And you
um,
don't get down the first round, you're down by 50 points.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, next day actually still does better. But
Yeah.
no,
Um,
yeah, for
so,
sure.
so now I guess a little bit about you. So you're from Grettinger,
Yep.
correct?
Damn. Yep. I
98.
graduated 98 from Grettinger, correct. Yep.
Nice.
Rest of
You're
that
actually,
Warburg after that.
yeah, you're actually the second person from Grettinger I had on. I had a guy by the name of Jared Enderton on because I saw he was like,
That's
he
my buddy.
is
I talked to him today actually a couple times.
really, he is.
I coached Jared. I was the head wrestling coach when he won it.
No kidding.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep. We had just moved back. My wife and I. My wife's from Emmitsburg. We had just moved back to Grettinger, and she was teaching, and then I helped out his junior year, and then his senior year, I took over as the head coach. Yep. So Jared's a good dude, man. So
Yeah.
I had a ton of respect for that guy. So he's doing awesome things, and
Yeah, he is. Anyway, you're from Grettinger.
yep.
Grettinger, is that where you're from? Is that where you grew up from your whole life?
Yeah, yep. Born and raised in Grettinger, graduated from Grettinger in '98. Had a brother Mike that graduated in '94, right before me. Yep.
Hmm. And was he big into wrestling, or like where did
Yeah,
the origin of wrestling in the family come from?
yeah. Kind of had. I have 2 older brothers actually. My oldest brother Wade never wrestled. I had brother Shane that wrestled, and he actually wrestled for Bob Roethler. Hall of Fame Bob Roethler coach back then, and then my brother Mike was kind of Mike made the state 4 years, made it as a freshman, and then he went on to wrestle at Wartburg. Was a 2-time All American. Mike was 4 years older than me, so we spent a lot of time together. He's really the one that got me into wrestling at a young age.
Hmm.
Uh, so yeah, I mean that was kind of the footsteps to follow. Mike was tough. He was a hammer. He beat
Hmm.
on guys. He was a front headlock guy. He didn't have a lot of technique, but he's just kind of a guy who want to beat you up more or less than take you down and win. But
Hmm.
so I spent a lot of time with him, and obviously he beat me up a lot as a young kid.
Yeah.
Having a big brother that beat up on you, so but yeah, so that's how it all started.
What about a step further, I guess, with your like parents and like uncles? Like, was it a family thing that way too?
Yeah, not really. I had a couple cousins. The last name was Herky, and then my mom's side. So I had a cousin Jarrett that was a year younger than my brother Mike. He went down and he qualified for state. He was always kind of the little guy on the team. He ended up wrestling for Ellsworth for a couple years,
Okay.
but he got 6 his senior year. So just a little bit in the extended family, but not too much.
Hmm.
Yep. Had like a great grandpa, I guess, that won
Yeah.
won it like way back in the 30s or something or 40s
There
back
we
when
go.
wrestling. Like you wrestle until you pin somebody. That's
Yeah.
what it was. It was pretty cool. He's like a multiple time state champ and national champ or something. We ended up finding out was pretty cool. But yeah.
Yeah. Well then what was it about wrestling? Like, did you try the other sports? I guess I ask people that too,
Mhm.
did you do the
Yeah.
circuit essentially?
I didn't, growing up, not really, because I guess my old brothers wrestled, and I had a cousin that wrestled. So coming up, I mean, I started wrestling in kindergarten.
Really?
Wrestling was a big deal, and in my watching my older brother, and we were close to Emmitsburg, and it wasn't long, and I was good friends with like Scott Kaufman, and a lot of those guys were my age, and Luke Moffett, and started hanging out with those guys at little kids tournaments and wrestled all the time. Ended up playing football too, and in high school, obviously, and I love football. I just about went and played football in college, but I golfed. I like golfing. Went
Hmm.
state in golf. And
Yes, your senior year, right?
yep, yeah, my senior year. So
There we go.
that was like the sport you could go do, and what football and wrestling were you grinded, you worked hard, you got big, and golf was kind of just go out and have fun a little bit as you did some freestyle and stuff too, but go golf and relax a little
Hmm.
bit. I enjoyed that. and still golf today. I enjoy that. Me and my son golf. My son golfs, so he's a freshman in the golf team now, and I love seeing that. We'd love to be able to go out and just golf together, something we'll always be able to do, so.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my off season too, if you will. Like I did track, and then I moved to Monticello, Iowa, and I played soccer, and that was my kind of relaxed season, if you will. I took cross country fairly seriously, and then wrestling, obviously, and so, spring was like, I still tried, obviously, like we still tried, we're competitive, but it wasn't nose to the grindstone like wrestling and cross country was.
Well, even back in those days, it wasn't either. We'd go down and wrestle, go someplace and wrestle, hit a tournament here and there.
For sure.
There was a couple tournaments you'd go find that would lead up to Fargo, but not much,
Yeah.
After the state tournament, there's a tournament every weekend somewhere.
Yeah.
And a national tournament that there's either postseason nationals or there's these Heartland duels, or there's always something, going on right now. So just way different, man, than it was 20 years ago.
Yeah. Right. I know. Now that I'm like sitting and thinking about it, because I don't think about it too much, but now that you mention it and I sit and think about it, I'm like, wow, yeah. Which is something we'll probably get into at some point.
Northwest Iowa, where we were, like Eastern Iowa was having some freestyle tournaments and stuff, but we had, or Fort Dodge maybe, but nothing in Northwest Iowa. We had one year, just put one together, and it was like, geez, everybody came because there wasn't anything north of Fort Dodge that was having freestyle stuff. You have to go to the Eastern Iowa, basically Osage, and over that.
True,
but there wasn't a lot going on, man. You work out once or twice a week and hit a tournament if you found one, but you'd have to drive, somewhere. A couple hours away, an hour. Like I said, Fort Dodge was always the closest. The Riles, the Riles always had one, or I think even state freestyle was in Fort Dodge one year, but it was not Northwest Iowa, man. It was pretty rare. So
interesting. Another thing that now just like kind of popped into my head was that like, I grew up in Eastern Iowa, so we kind of were lucky in that aspect. Like Northwest Iowa, where was it just more rural, where towns were just more spread apart, or was wrestling just not quite picked up there? Like what? I think it's hard to.
It takes the right people, like in certain parts of the state, you had like Jason Christensen in the middle, you had like Massey down in like the Council Bluffs area, and Riles were Fort Dodge, and those guys they were doing that stuff. But Northwest Iowa, I think there just wasn't somebody up there that was pushing it along, and getting things going. And like Gary Bergman was my high school coach, and he brought it up there and tried to get people going with it, but it was harder, because I don't know, more farm boys, more kids in the field in the spring. I mean, that was our thing. We were always in the field. I got to go golf, but my dad, I could never go to golf practice because we had to pick rock or get the fields ready. Like that was always the first thing that needed to happen before we could go do other things, and even wrestling. But
really.
Yeah, so I think it's the people, whoever you had in your area in that pushed and got into it, that's Northwest Iowa just didn't really have that.
Yeah. Yeah. So when did you start doing it as much year round as you could and started to really kind of revolve around wrestling?
Having an older brother, it kind of made you, you're kind of, I won't say forced into it, but obviously I had somebody to follow,
Yeah.
So that was 4 years ahead of me. So, my brother Mike was doing it and going to stuff, and became friends with a lot of guys, so we would go and travel and do that stuff a little bit. But, we weren't wrestling, like tournaments a lot, kind of get ready for state freestyle. My sophomore year, I got beat at districts and I wasn't supposed to, got beat by two guys I'd beaten 4 earlier in the year, and I didn't make it out. And my brother went to nationals that year for Wartburg and got second. And I didn't take that district loss very well. And I just started wrestling all the time, a lot more. Went to Fargo that year and started going to more tournaments. I think that was a big deal. Just getting you more mat experience out there and competing. And I started to beat some guys that I remember going down to the Fort Madison tournament, right? That was a big freestyle tournament.
Yeah, Mick Pickford.
Yeah, for us, that's like a 5-hour drive from Northwest Iowa all the way down to Fort.
Yeah.
But I remember going down there and beating a couple guys, and my brother, my cousin, like, geez, like, who you just beat? And I'm like, no, I don't. And they're like, oh, you just beat. Like I remember beating Mitch Payton down in West Delaware. Mitch was tough. I had no idea who he was. I was just some sophomore up in Northwest Iowa. But then I started getting confident. That's just, I think that what that stuff does, it builds confidence. You get out there, wrestle some guys, and catch some guys when they're not in shape, and
Mhm.
stuff like that. You beat some guys, pretty soon you're like, oh, I'm not too bad. I started wrestling a lot more really after that. My spring of my sophomore year.
Yeah,
But
what happened at districts? I kind of read a little bit about it. Just had a bad day,
yeah, I don't know.
essentially.
It shows up, man. I think I went in the sophomore my freshman year. I separated my shoulder and I missed half the year and made it to districts and got fourth and lost in my sophomore year. I was having a good year. Went to sectionals, beat I think Dennis Mosier from Rockwell City was like got fourth year before. I didn't even know that. It's weird back then. Like you just didn't know as much. You had to read the paper,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Even my freshman when I didn't make it, I was pretty down about it. And my brother made it as a freshman. I'm just trying to follow in his footsteps. And my sophomore, I went. We had Tim Helgeson ended up being a state champ for Lake Mills at heavyweight when we were seniors. So I'm at 160 my sophomore, junior, my senior year. 152 as a freshman.
Wow.
Going in the districts, our sectionals, I beat Mosier, who got four. So I came out sectional champ. Went to districts, had Tim Helgeson, and then Blair Thomason from Eagle Grove. And I think I'd beaten Tim a couple times during the year and pinned Blair once. They came through and I had Blair first round and really I was looking ahead of him. I had a kid that I pinned and I looked ahead, but I got out there and I give it to Blair, man. He brought it at me. And I don't know if he took me down right away or something, but there's one match I can never go back and think like I can't explain it. Like I couldn't do anything. I think I kind of froze. I think it's kind of like a deer in the headlights. And I give it to Blair, man. He wrestled me tough and he beat me. And then Helgeson ended up beating him, so I didn't get a wrestle back. And I'd beaten Tim twice during the year. And they both went down and got fifth and sixth, I think, as soft. They're both sophomores, my age, same age. They went down and placed. And then a sophomore, Mike Cassidy, won it for Martinsville St. Mary, like won my bracket. And I think as an eighth grader, I won AAU and he got like fourth or fifth. I'm like, man, like really like two guys I beat this year, got fifth and sixth. The guy that
Yeah.
I beat AAU that I knew I could beat or wrestle with, won my bracket. And I think there's some things I just changed my training. I just I was more intentional in training and probably more intentional in the whoopings I got from my brother,
Yeah.
but things changed, with that. And I got better. I wrestled a lot more and turned some things around than in the, making the finals as a junior, but definitely just got hungrier. I needed those things to happen in all honesty, probably. So
Yeah. Yeah. And to kind of put it all together and make it as a junior to the finals, I mean,
mm-hmm.
I think what you kind of said it was kind of hard to describe at some points, wrestling in
Yeah,
the state finals, like, oof.
it was your first year there and you can go to the finals and and I knew I could be there. I mean, I trained
Mhm.
hard. I actually went that summer and my brother was at Wartburg and I actually went over and lived in Waverly for part of the summer. The
Wow.
Wartburg guys would stick around in the summer and I was in the wrestling room just getting the tar beat out of me most of the time. It was good for me, but I grew up a lot, in that process. Hung around those guys. I was around a lot of good people, at that point and just took wrestling more seriously. I think in my junior year, I mean, it was a crazy year. I remember I was unbeaten and the week before sectionals. Back then we had sectionals and districts, right? And the week before
Right.
wrestled Scott Kaufman. And Scott was second, ranked number one, and he used to beat the tar out of me all the time in
Hmm.
AAU. Little kids, and Scott and we were good friends, and I beat him. We were both. I was ranked like 2 or 3. And he was ranked number one. But then Dustin Hartog was at that. We had a triangular that day, and Dustin Hartog from Clear Lake was tough, and he was there. I remember beating Scott. Our towns were like 8 miles apart, and it was kind of a big deal at that time. My wife now, like she was from Emmitsburg, so I was down. Like I hung out with all those guys, knew all
Hmm.
those guys well, but I beat Scott in our only high school match. I still gave him crap. I'm like, that's the only one that really matters. We might have been 30-0 against being little kids, but I got the one that counted. We had a heck of a match, and I beat him there. And then I went out and got pinned by Dustin and Hartog. Like I was like 30 minutes later. We didn't have a lot of we had a decent team, but we weren't that good.
Hmm.
We didn't have anybody in the lower weight, so like we wrestled Emmitsburg, and they pounded on us. Then we turned around and wrestled Clear Lake. Like it felt like we didn't have anybody to like 130 or something. Then we got pinned. I was wrestling at Hartog. And Scott and I had like a 15-11 match or something. I think I was still tired. I was still tired the next day from that match. I want nothing. He went out there. But I always thought I got pinned in high school. He went out there and cradled me in the first period. I got pinned. I'm like, what just happened? I just beat Scott Coffin, for God's sakes. And then I just got pinned by a second-ranked kid from Clear Lake. I'm like, and then Scott went out there and beat Dustin, in the triangular like the next match. But that was a cool day. But I went from a huge high to oh my God, I just got pinned. Like, good guys don't get pinned. Like, that was my mindset, But
yeah.
And then I went on and when Scott got beat by the Webster City kid downstate, which I was like in the semis, and I won and got to the finals, and but yeah, it's some tough guys, man. Those guys were tough.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. But on the flip side, talking about the highest of highs, making the state finals, to the lowest of lows was what, your senior year, you're feeling good, probably thinking you're the guy to beat, and then first round at state.
Yeah. That was that's still a stinging story.
Yeah.
My junior year, I before that, I hurt my shoulder really bad. I actually tore my labrum in that first match against Brett Myers from Postville my junior year. So I won that first round.
Yeah.
He like cradled. I pinned Brent, but he like came across and just ripped my shoulder apart. Like, I was down, he just ripped it over. I did not know it during the match. But the next day when I got up, 1A was always a 9 a.m. session. I remember getting up that next morning thinking, I'm done. Like, I couldn't lift my shoulder. I was basically bawling in the shower at the hotel, just trying to like get heat on it, warm up. We went over and warmed up, and my brother came down from Wartburg. He was there. We warmed up in the bottom of vets for the entire time from weigh-ins till I wrestled, just to keep my shoulder loose.
Wow.
And I was exhausted going off my quarterfinal match. And I beat Casey Chalupa from Grant in overtime he shot in. I gave him all I had with a sagging headlock left. I was done. I was exhausted. And I beat him in the quarters and then went to the semis. And then didn't work up myself so much in the semis, and really had a really good match against Bernie Thomas in the semis, and kind of, didn't have any problems there. But yeah, and my shoulder, I never got surgery on it. I couldn't lift it above I couldn't lift a chair above my head until like football season the next fall. Wow. I never got it. Now I got problems with it now, but just tore that labrum and just dealt with it after that. But yeah, I went from a high low there, just thinking like I won my first round state, thinking I'm done. Like, I'm not wrestling anymore. But that was that junior year. And then, yeah, my senior year,
wow.
Got spladled in the first round. I'll never forget. It was silly because I actually came back from it. Like, I got spladled. I was kind of beating up on the kid. Then I got spladled, and I got out. Like, the period ran out, and he like tied it up, or I was down by 1. But I had contacts. I wore glasses and had contacts in, and I didn't know. So I tied it up with a stall call with like 10 seconds left or something. I didn't know that I tied it up. So I tried to do something with like 5 seconds left. That was dumb because I thought I was down by a point. I was actually tied. So I lost that match. Like, and I didn't know it. I couldn't see the damn scoreboard. I had lost my contact. Both my contacts I had lost because we even had a reset. And I couldn't see the score. And my coaches weren't really saying anything. They thought I didn't know. I didn't know I got that stall call. And I tied it up. And I thought I was down by 1. I just, like I said, I literally did something stupid and fell on my back or whatever, and gave up 2. But yeah, I got splayed on the first. I just remember the Des Moines back there was like the Des Moines Register. Like, we didn't have any internet stuff. We didn't.
Right.
The Des Moines Register had my leg, had me in a splado, and whoever it was that took the picture was like looking right at me with my legs in the air, and it said upset start. Cause we were the first. 1A was always first. Upset start early, and here I am spladed on my back in the front page of the register. That's a haunting image to this day. That's But I wrestled back and got in the wrestling in the consolation semis, and Drew Bader from North Cedar. So mad. I tell a lot of my kids this day, like kids I've coached, I said, one guy gave me my most awful match of my career, my best match, because I just wanted to wrestle that guy again. I just wanted to rip his head off. Nothing against Drew. I was just pissed. I pinned him in that match, but yeah, it kind of. I wanted to quit, man. I'm not gonna lie. When I lost that match, I was done. I was just done mentally. I was just there in a bad place. But I had good people in my corner, that didn't allow me to do that, obviously, and wrestle back and lost an overtime match to Jason Lyles from Pleasantville, which was a great match. We got done. The ref, like, he told both of us, like, that was one of the best matches I've ever reffed. We just just battled, we just battled. So just, glad I did that. Like, again, had people in my corner that weren't going to let me, go over and cry and whine about losing the first round.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate that. But yeah, it sucks,
Yeah.
but still bothered you. I think I'm describing it like it happened last week, it still sticks with you, a little bit, obviously, but those things have molded me today. They've molded me to the person I am today, and probably a lot of reasons I went into coaching.
Yeah.
From then on there. So
how'd you end up at Wartburg? So you finished your career second and fourth. Did you plan on wrestling in college? Like, was that always in the cards, or did it just sort of happen?
I was gonna do something. I loved football, man. Friday night,
True. Yeah.
Small town Iowa Class A football. I started as a freshman, and got to play a lot of nights underneath the Friday night lights. I love football. Just wasn't very fast. Got recruited a little bit for it. But at the end of the day, I spent a lot of time at Wartburg watching, with my brother there. And, really fell in love with Coach Miller and what they were doing over there. They won the first national title in 96. My brother was a sophomore and he got second. And so it's just, that just kind of, I went to I did some visits, man, and looked at a lot of places, but Wartburg it just felt like home already, and they were doing some good things. And so that's where I went, and I had a great experience there, man. Like, Wartburg was a great place. It was the right place for me, without a doubt. Freshman year we won it again in '99. I was behind Ben Jobjan from Assumption, and sophomore year I battled it out with geez, can't think of his name right now. He's from Ames. Holgrafer, Justin Holgrafer, transferred from Iowa State. He and I battled all year. But I banged my knee at my sophomore year and I got like really bad bursitis in it and ruptured my bursa sac, and I can wrestle very well. But Justin ended up going on and being our guy for us, and ended up getting, like one match being an All-American. I battled some knee injuries that year all year, and just had some things. I had some injuries and stuff happen. And then my junior year, I trained hard. It was kind of weird. Like, coming out my sophomore year of high school, my sophomore year of college, they were big turning points for me. I ended up not being the guy as a sophomore, and Justin did. He went and did really well for the team, and I got my mind back going again. I think my first year or two, maybe I was a little burnt out from high school a little bit. I'm not burnt out, but I was tired. I was, in a different place a little bit. And junior, I got together. I was in the best shape of my life my junior year, going into Wartburg. Coming back, I think I was kind of being seen as a leader. I was, probably going to be the 74. I was really, the 74 pounder coming in, and we had a lot of young guys in that team. And going into that year, I remember I had my first practice, October 16th of 2000, and my dad was killed in a farm accident. So I came home for my first day of practice, and my oldest brother called, and he didn't really ever call, and I got the news right. I mean, hour after practice, got back to my apartment, and that rattled me, man. My junior year, my brother Mike was coaching at Ellsworth, and we were farmers, and Dad was killed in a farm accident, and went home for a week or so, and I didn't handle it very well, man. I came back and I wrestled, and I was our guy, and wrestle 74, but I struggled, looking back, and just wasn't handling that loss. First person I really ever lost, that was my dad. So it was pretty. It was rough. I kind of joke with some people now. I'm like, if it had been my brother Mike, like, everybody processes grief differently. Mike probably would have ripped everybody's heads off that year and won national title. Nobody would have touched him. And I just processed things a little different. I struggled with it, and kind of tore me up. I just remember wrestling all these matches. Like, I was training hard, I was there. Wasn't really, I was at school, but I couldn't tell you one thing that happened in the classroom that year. Like, I was in class, but I was never there. I was mourning, man. I was grieving hard. And wrestling wise, I would wrestle like I was training. I felt like I was in great shape coming in. I was so tired by the second period in all those matches, and I think I was just mentally wearing myself out, in that process. Looking back, I just couldn't figure it out. Like, why am I so tired? And wasn't many nights I didn't go to bed balling, man. I lost the biggest person in my life.
Right.
and it affected me. But I remember being at my dad's funeral, and that my dad was, we're a small town. He was like a Pioneer salesman, and it was a big funeral. But I remember like 40 Wartburg guys walking in, drove 4 hours, 3 hours to come to the funeral. Every one of those guys showed up for me, and my brother and all of our coaches, and it was a pretty powerful moment. I'll never forget it, and appreciate all those guys for, doing that. And so I went back to wrestling for them. I was wrestling for those guys, but myself, I was shot. And then I remember going to the regional tournament or qualifier. I felt good. Nick Ackerman, man, was in my bracket. Rob Murray and Zach Gordon and me. There's and then and Nick. We had, and all. So I ended up getting fifth. I was a 5 seed, and Zach Gordon and I wrestled first. And I wrestled all those guys and do a lot of close matches to all those guys. Only wrestled Nick one time, and he was so tough to wrestle, especially at that point. The year that he won national, man, and beat Slock. Got an SB with Cale Sanderson that year. But he was tough to wrestle, especially when he wrestled one time. I wish I could wrestle him more times. But I lost to Zach. I felt like I took Zach down right away in the first period at the regional tournament with the 4 and the 5 seed. And we probably knew that 4 of us were going to get through. The 5th guy was going to be out. I took him down, riding him. I was a leg rider, and I got high on him. He grabbed my head and pinned me, end of the first period, I think, or something. But I was riding him hard. I felt so good. I was wrestling that day for my teammates, man. I was like, I'm here for you guys. I'm gonna get through. I was mentally there. And then Justin Dix and I had a heck of a match. I think he was the 2 seed, and I ended up lost to Justin like in an 18-17 match. But Rob Murray and Nick Ackerman and Justin Dix and Zach Gordon all went to nationals that year. They were the top 4. Because then you got like wild cards. I think it was the top 3 or something. And wild cards came out of the old Iowa conference. So those 4 guys went through, and 3 of them all American that year. So I had a tough deal, but I lost close matches with them. But again, that was kind of my year that I had the best year at Wartburg. And then coming my senior year, I still wasn't. I still was back dealing with some knee issues. I had knee surgery. I ended up getting an infection on that torn or that my
the bursa sac.
Yep, kept rupturing. I never gave it time to heal. Ended up getting an infection in it. Had surgery at Iowa City, and I just never ended up having 2 surgeries on it actually, and just never could get over that infection. I was good to go my senior, like I could wrestle. We got about a month into it. Mentally, I was exhausted. I was still mourning a little bit. I just wasn't handling myself real good in terms of just dealing with stuff. I was tired, and one of the Sturms, who were my actually distant cousins of mine, so they came in from Emmitsburg, Ryan and Mark Sturm. And Ryan and Mark ended up being the guy, took my place and my weight, and ended up being matched, being All-American. We were like a half a point or 1 point from winning it that year. I still sit with a little regret. I feel like if I had wrestled, that was could have got some things done. But that was kind of my life at Wartburg, for the most part. Part of a lot of good things, just never really accomplished a whole lot. But that place made me, big time. I mean, Coach Miller was great. But my best friends, for the most part today, are the guys I wrestled with at that place. Scott Eddy, best friend. Scotty was a champ in Independence, and I were roommates for 3 of the 4 years there at Wartburg, and so. A lot of us out there coaching now. I love seeing all those guys, Wartburg's a special place, still is, So
yeah. Did you ever take a step back from wrestling, like just even after all that, after maybe not reaching your goals and the death of your father and mentally and the injuries, like, oh man, that could be a lot, to handle. And did you ever resent wrestling or have to take a step back from wrestling and be like, I just can't deal with wrestling at all in any capacity right now?
Yeah, it's a good question. Right before my dad got killed, my wife and I got engaged. We were kind of a long distance relationship. She was from Emmitsburg, and we got engaged. And right after college, I did like that. So my senior year, I kind of did step back. Like I didn't do a lot with Wartburg. I started training. I think I ended up meeting with Millboy like almost 1st of November. I'm like, man, I'm just like, I feel like I'm gonna do you guys a disservice. Like I'm not into it. I'm just not here. So I stepped back from there, and I actually went to mortuary school, believe it or not. After that,
Really?
I got an elementary education degree. But my wife's brother had just built a new funeral home, or in the process of building a new funeral home. I got it done. And he's like, "Yeah, you ever want to, think you want to come back and maybe like be a mortician with it. He had no family. He just built a new funeral home in Emmitsburg. At first, I'm like, no, like I went to the funeral home one time. I really don't want to go back, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I spent a little bit of time around him doing it. I'm like, hey, you know, it doesn't bother me. I actually felt like maybe this was something that was meant to be. Give us a chance to come back and, you know, have a business back in our home area. So actually, we moved to Chicago. We got married right after we graduated our senior years. She was actually in Omaha. She went to graphic art design school in Omaha.
Oh, really?
Yep. And so she was in Omaha when my dad died, and she spent a lot of time down there for college. But so when Chicago went to mortuary school, so that was kind of my time away. And then we actually lived in Ottumwa. That's where I ended up working for a year of school, mortuary school, and lived in Ottumwa. And didn't do anything with wrestling down there. Just focused on, you know, worked at the funeral home there, and Teresa ended up going back to school and so she graduated from graphic design school in Omaha, and I graduated in Warburg. Well, that was 9/11. And like that was when shut down marketing. Like she was the number one in her class, but she couldn't get a job anywhere. You know, everybody was cutting their marketing. It was just crazy times, you know, back then when that all happened. So she could like go to Chicago and work, but it was like, you know, everybody cut those people from their positions at that time. But so she went back to school. So we lived in Ottumwa for a while. Then we moved to Nashville, Tennessee for a little bit. Ottumwa for a year and a half, almost 2 years. And my wife she's really got some music talent. We went down there a little bit, and she kind of had a little bit of a window to go down there and try some things. And I remember that. So that was when I started getting the urge back to wrestle again or get into a room. And we moved. We lived like really close to a high school down in Nashville, Centennial High School. And I remember just going in. I'm like, I gotta get back into wrestling. I'm starting to miss it now. About 2.5 out. And I remember walking in or getting a hold of the guy, emailing him, and he's like, absolutely, get in here. He's like, I go in there. He's like, dude. He goes, you wrestle in college? You're from Iowa? He's like, yeah, like whatever. How often can you be in here? You know, I kind of started helping out coaching at that high school a little bit. Never went to like meets. I just I don't even know what the rules were in Tennessee. I was just in the room working out with some guys, you know, and that started to tell me. I went into teaching because I always wanted to coach. That's what I was really going to school for. And then so that was when I started getting the bug back to coach. And then we were in Nashville for like 8 months, and then we moved back to Grettinger. My wife got a teaching job in Grettinger. We moved back, and then that was, you know, all of a sudden I started coaching again. You know, I got back home, and Jared was a junior. Anderton was a junior that year, and you know, so we had some good kids in the program. So I started coaching. So I got back into it, started coaching at that time. I think that was 2005, 2006. We moved back. So coached ever since.
Yeah,
for the most part. So yeah.
Ever work in a funeral home?
Yep. So yeah, did the funeral. So when we went to Tennessee, I did all the prep work at a huge. They had like 8 funeral homes brought all the body stuff. So I just did prep work. I didn't do like in Ottumwa for a year and a half. I was a full-time funeral director and embalmer at a Reese Funeral Home in Ottumwa. Okay. And then I went on and in Nashville, I did all the embalming for like 8 funeral homes for 8 months. And
okay,
you know, it's kind of funny when you I tell a lot of people, like, you know, I was an academic All-American Warburg. Yeah. I still remember sitting down any interview I've ever had, like just being in sports, you know, competing at a high level in college, like, and then having some academic accolades. Like, you sit down in an interview with somebody, they're going to hire you on the spot. You know, they just speak so much about who you are and what you've been through. And I just enjoy telling kids that, like, just grind, man, just work hard, you know. And when you sit down and you want the job that you want, that resume doing these things is going to speak for itself. And it always did for me, you know. So that's how I got that job in Nashville. So I did that, and then we moved back home, and then I ended up doing the funeral home. I ended up building a funeral home, just a little mortuary in Grettinger, a little chapel that I did for about 8 or 9 years. Okay. And then ended up getting out of it a little bit. It just was hard, and we weren't doing a lot of funerals. But I started coaching full time in Iowa Lakes. I got hired at Iowa Lakes full time, and that was when it was hard then to do both. And so I just kind of let my brother-in-law take it over. So, okay. So
how'd you land at Iowa Lakes?
So I coached at Grettinger for 7 years. Iowa Lakes had kind of just started the program there for a little bit, you know. They hired one guy. He didn't do a very good job. And then they brought in Ty Eustace, and Ty did an awesome job there for a couple of years. And then the AD up there I knew, and he was kind of, you know, he and I started talking a little bit. When Ty left, I hired another guy. And I think he was soon understanding that it was going to be a revolving door for for the coaching carousel, bring a guy in for a couple years, young guy, and then he was going to go on and do something else. So I think we just, wanted somebody more local. That was, I moved back home. That's where, we were both from back home, my wife and I. And so that was kind of how that all started. Just through those conversations, I ended up applying and getting it. And man, I had loved it up there for 9 seasons, 10 years. And
wow.
Yeah, I love, it was home for us, ended up being, my kids were, had a couple kids and they were growing up around their grandparents, and so it was a good thing being back close home to the family. And I'm doing a dream job for me, man. I was coaching wrestling full time.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't matter what level. I was impacting kids and coaching, and loved it. My wife was a teacher and ended up becoming an administrator. It ended up being a blessing for us to be back home because, again, we hit some serious adversity.
Yeah.
My wife was my son was 1, so my daughter Stacia was 3, and my son was 1, and my wife was diagnosed with nearly stage 4 breast cancer. So we had quite the journey there. She was a school administrator, and went through that, and being back home in small town, we both grew up. I mean, our support was tremendous, man. I mean, like it changed our lives in terms of what she had to go through, and being a caregiver. And I didn't even know what I was at that time. I was just making ends meet, going through a tough time in our life. But being back home was a blessing, at that time. So, and I think I just taken that was kind of the turn of me taking the job at Alesch about that same time.
So let me ask you this, there was somebody else. So I had head coach by the name of Joel Allen on here, and he had when his wife had their last child, she went through a lot of issues with the pregnancy and stuff. And so I'll ask you the question I asked him. So you're battling this adversity at home, you're dealt this huge blow, that your wife has breast cancer. And now you have to, like, were you actively, like, at that time, you said kind of that's when you were at Iowa Lakes. Were you coaching at that time? Like, were you actively going to practice at that time? So how were you able to compartmentalize what you were going through at home, worrying so much about your wife and kids? And like, that is obviously, like, that's tough. And now you have to go to practice. Now you have to be on for your athletes. You have to make sure that you're there for them, like that. How did you balance that?
It's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I think, when you're young and you're going through adversity, just like, we'll get into what we do now, but it's like, you just make ends meet. I mean, I think that's what sports teaches you. That's what wrestling taught me. I mean, you got a wife and you got 2 kids, and then you got all these, this other responsibility that you have. And again, I say I was fortunate too, to be back home because I had my mom was there, like her parents were there. I had a sister there, brother. So like, when the kids needed to be somewhere else, we had lots of options. So it was a village helping us through all that, at that time. And without all that, like, we'd have been somewhere else and I've been coaching. I don't know. I don't know how, because I know those people in our lives were extremely important, and we had a lot of people step up for us and be there for us. And we use it now. We present and do speaking engagements, and we work with athletes, and we say this a lot, like, that area is known to really step up and help people. And I'm not saying we were ever the first, but it felt like anytime somebody goes through something in Grettinger and Emmitsburg in that area, like those communities are second to none in stepping up and helping those people through it, whether it's food chain stuff, people bringing meals, or they have fundraisers or whatever, and that's what it was like for us, man. It was, I can never put it into words what those people, did for our families, our extended friends, and stuff like that. So I think you put your head down and you grind. I don't remember a lot of it, man. To be honest with you, you go to work and you give everything you got to your family when you get home, to the guys that you're coaching when you're with them, and it makes you who you are. I think that's our darkest days, I think, lead to our brightest moments too, and we have done a lot of things. What we do today is even based on what we've gone through in the past, because I think we look at life from a different perspective. I ended up losing my mom a few years after that to cancer, and Teresa's lost a close uncle and died. We've had a lot of loss in our family through a young age. Even our 2 kids have experienced a lot of loss, and we don't take a day for granted. We do the things we love to do, we want to, our careers, we want to do something we're passionate about and so forth. So, and coaching was that for me. I didn't make a whole lot,
Mm-hmm.
coaching Isle Lake, but I loved it. I loved the impact that I had. I loved going up there every day and in that environment, and I loved having my kids around it. You know, that was cool for me. And my son now, man, I used to love taking him on the bus and being around the guys.
Mm-hmm.
I never pushed him in wrestling like you gotta go do this or that. It was just, if you want to, it was whatever you want to do. And we were like that with both of our kids. Didn't put any pressure on them. Didn't want them to feel like they had have any expectations, especially when like back home. And not saying like we weren't a big, but everybody knew who we were, and everybody who knew who we were as athletes. The last name. Even my wife, her family was just her brothers and her they're athletes. Had a lot of success.
Mm-hmm.
So we never pushed them anything, but man, I thought it was really, I began to realize like having my son and my daughter around. Even my mom, sometimes I brought her on the charter, became a wrestling mom. But for my guys that I coached to see me as a father, and as a son and as a husband, I think were some of the most impactful things that I did around the guys that I coached.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed that. And my son right now, he wrestles, but he's a fan of the sport way more than he is, I'm going to be a state champ or national champ. He just loves the sport. And I think the relationships that you build, through that, no matter what age, because man, my guys at Iowa Lakes treated my kids like they were a prince and a princess,
Mm-hmm.
and I loved that. It was a cool thing, man. I had a lot of kids I coached at Iowa Lakes that had some rough backgrounds, had some rough, some of them didn't have parents.
Mm-hmm.
Some had one, so you make it. That's your family, and so those are the things I remember, man, by Iowa Lakes, and we had some success there and had some national champs and a lot of All-Americans, things like that. But now I see these guys married and being fathers, and some of them back there, I'm like, oh, this guy, I hope he's never a father,
Yeah,
But
yeah.
those dudes are the best fathers in the world right now,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm proud of that. I love that. I love getting text messages or seeing Facebook, seeing these guys are engaged or having their kids and reaching out to me and sharing those moments with me. Like, dude, that's better than any national title that any guy could ever win for me.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing that stuff now, and I think a lot of that was just we made it a family thing. I probably really started to take my son, who was only 2 or 3 at the time when we were going through a lot of that, up to the wrestling practices more and stuff like that too. And I always thought, and there ended up being some really cool moments. I still get guys like send me pictures of them with him, sometimes riding in the bus and charter bus or whatever, and he'd be sleeping on them, and it just like at the wrestling tournaments, he's wrestling with guys, or watching warm up or being in the corner, like, dude, that was cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Love seeing those pictures and those memories. So
Yeah. Well, that kind of will lead us into what you do now. So,
mhm.
kind of planted the background story of who you are, how you got to, how you got to be the person you are today. And so now that leads us again, like I said, into the athlete's mentor.
Mhm.
When did that start? And like,
Yeah.
when did that even become sort of like an idea or a thought that you were like, okay, I think we want to do something like this?
Yeah. So we lived in Emmitsburg. We ended up living in Gretinger and moved to Emmitsburg. My wife went to the Catholic school in Emmitsburg, and I'm Catholic. We're both Catholic, and
Mm-hmm.
we ended up putting the kids in Emmitsburg school, the Catholic school in Emmitsburg. And then we just were kind of looking for something different. My wife, after she went through breast cancer, she ended up going through some other illnesses. Like she had breast implant illness, where her implants reacted like her body didn't accept them. So
Mm-hmm.
she ended up, kind of getting out of administration, looking for something different. Because the whole time she became, and she enjoyed, she loved being a teacher, she loved being a principal. Um, but it's kind of like you go somewhere and you eat like Subway, and then you get the flu right after it. You don't ever really go back to Subway again.
Yeah.
That's kind of what education became for her, because she was just sick all the time as an administrator, and I think it just wore her out. So looking for something different, and then I started to see my kids do a lot of things athletically at a young age. Like they wanted to be a part of stuff. My daughter started playing a lot of basketball. My Teague started to play a lot of baseball, like younger, and like some AU travel team stuff that we really didn't want to do at that point because it was just hard. We're a young couple and traveling for AU stuff. Like I'm working or traveling, coaching, and it was hard,
Mm-hmm.
man. Like to do travel stuff around here. we ended up having a brother, or Teresa's brother ended up having a girl that he took all to play basketball. My dad was like, I want to do that. I want to do that. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's a lot of money, a lot of time. But we ended up doing it and, started doing it and really started traveling a little bit more with that. And I started to see like, okay, like this is going to be conflicting. Like someday, if I'm still coaching, I'm on the road over here coaching down, in another state or wherever. And my daughter Seisha is going to be playing basketball or something or doing this. And my son starts to get that age. Like, I'm not going to be there. And I didn't like that idea, So I started thinking like, this is probably going to end sometime. I looked for something different because to me, my priority, and I think a lot of it comes back to the losses we had been through. And my dad and mom were, they were pretty much at everything. My dad wasn't a lot of things from farming, but I just wanted to be there. I wanted to see my kids compete. I loved it. So we ended up looking for a different option and looking around a little bit. We ended up moving to Algona. My daughter was an 8th grader and Teague was in 6th grade. And so we then moved to Algona, and we kind of wanted the kids to continue their schooling, education with faith-based education. And my niece, I had a niece, Teresa had a niece, and my goddaughter and my niece ended up going to Bishop Garrigan and playing basketball with Audie Crooks. And so that was over here, and my niece and my daughter were pretty close. So we ended up coming to Algona and going to Bishop, and the kids started going to Bishop Garrigan. And so I left Iowa Lakes at that time, and my wife left education. And we had to do something that we wanted to be at everything, but it was totally like, what do we do? We were rooting our family. Like, it was the most stressful time of my life. Honestly, I didn't know what the heck I was, and I was leaving my dream job. Like, I love coaching. I miss that place. We started doing something with high ticket sales. We started working from home doing high ticket sales. We did that for the first year and a half we were over here, but we were in a company that I became a coach of the sales team, like real early on. I think they just kind of saw that, and my wife ended up being like a manager of the whole company, and worked up really high. And we were probably making the most money we've ever made at that time, doing good, but it was such a toxic environment. So we wanted to get out of it. It wasn't right for us. And I started thinking like, what can we do, man? We love being around kids. We love being around athletes. So I started reaching out to some college coaches and started thinking like, what do you like? When we were really good at Iowa Lakes, I thought we had some good, like we had really good leadership. And I started talking to coaches like, hey, if I came in, like worked with your team and built leadership from the inside out, like what would you do? I started getting great responses. So I started working with some college teams on leadership. We call it internal high performance leadership. And we would go in and work with kids, and basically they would kind of put some guys in our leadership group, and we would work with them on building leadership from the inside out and kind of take that off the coach's shoulders a little bit. So that's how it started. And then we started getting people like, oh, what are you guys doing? And people reaching out to, oh, can you work with my kid? And, can you work with so-and-so? And sometimes it was a 12-year-old, sometimes it was a high school kid. So we just started thinking like, man, like there's a void here. Like athletes need like mentorship, you know what I mean? Like, how can we, parents want we started hearing a lot of parents, I just need another voice. Like I tell my kid this, but they don't hear it. They don't want to hear it from me. So I put a lot of things together. And like, man, there's really like, we really felt like we were good at this. We were parents, we were both college athletes. We were both been coaches. We both been in education, and it was kind of natural for us. And, man, we just started kind of plugging that in more and more. So we ended up kind of changing from like internal high performance leadership. And then we created the athlete's mentor. High performance leadership, people are like, well, what's that? What do you do? And we have to explain it all. And like, what do you guys do? We mentor athletes.
Perfect.
We changed our name, rebranded, and we're about 2 years into that now, growing and getting that in there. And that's what we do. We mentor athletes, man, getting our name out there so people know what we do. I think a lot of people don't, again, it's a void. We support parents supporting their kids. We support coaches, supporting their kids. And we still work with college teams, so we're still doing that too. I think we worked with 16 college programs, working on that internal leadership still. We work with one-on-one kids. We have some groups, but we're just getting out there and really showing and letting people know that there's a void. Athletes need some mentorship. And the impact that we've had, it's been amazing. What we do is so much. It's so fun for us. So impactful, I think, for the athletes. But we're helping parents, in that process. We're allowing parents to step back and be mom and dad. And we have failed as parents 1,000 times, we still do, not like we haven't done it all right. But I think we try to help parents through that in a way that they can step back and be mom and dad, because, these kids, these athletes need their parents, to be mom and dad, not be that coach, and so forth. And it really helps the relationships, I think there too. And we get a lot of that feedback of what that is. So it's been really powerful. So,
yeah. Do you also so you have relationships with the athletes and mentor them. Do you also sort of mentor the parents as well to an extent to kind of explain their role in all this and what
yeah,
it
we
should
do.
look like?
Yep, and that's something we're kind of adding on and growing to. We've known that's going to be an important part. And so within our programs, we offer parents to be able to come in and, so once a month right now, we have what we call, like, last one we had was the struggles real, where we do a master class where parents can come in and we just talk about how do you help your kids through challenges and adversities. We had one the month before that was called the car ride home. Like, that's a really big topic. Like
Yes.
talk to my kid after a competition. Right, that's a
Love
really
that.
tough time. So those have been really awesome. We help. So those are some things of topics that we talked about. We get parents together that are, when their kids are in our program, we get where the parents can come in and we have like just they can come in and we just do some brainstorming and have a topic, and we're there. So we're kind of creating a little bit more and more. So we hopefully got some really cool news coming up. I'll kind of talk about a little bit, but we're working into that for sure, because that's an area, and we've had even some coaches, especially some club coaches, talk about that, like worried about that, even the way that, hey, we're working with our athletes over here and we're mentoring them, we're coaching them, and then they're going home and the parent, like, they're going backwards again, because they're in this environment where the parents are like, they might be, even if they're saying the same thing, it's not coming across the same way. So we're finding that's an area of need and a want, and we've had some great conversations with some club coaches, and I think we're really close to having a really cool announcement here soon with a big club here in Iowa. It's gonna be pretty awesome that we're gonna go in and work with all their athletes, all their parents, and they have the same vision that we have. So it's definitely it's a void out there, I think, and I think it's kind of an elephant in the room. A lot of people don't want to talk about it either. I think in the wrestling world too, people, a lot of parents think they're doing the right thing. They're grinding, pushing their kids
Yep.
hard, and that's what they need. But is it, and for some, I think it is. You can do that with some kids, but man, like a majority of the kids, like, it creates a lot of tensions. I'm gonna tell you, Kobe, the one thing I don't miss, and I left there every year for 5 years with my son, was the AAU state tournament and the things that I saw happen in those 2 days between sometimes some parents and kids, sometimes some parents and club coaches. I left there almost sometimes just disappointed in the sport of wrestling. Like, this is what we're kind of getting to, like, man, like, it shouldn't be like this. I love this sport. And I saw some things that just disappointed me, that people, that was the relationships that were going on, because it can be kind of ugly. And then Jordan Burroughs put out a big post on it here. I don't know if you saw it on his stuff, like 2 weeks ago. He started a club out in New Jersey and made a post. I went to my first AAU state tournament, with my club, and he's like, I left, and he's just like heartbroken at the things that he saw, happening, and so forth. So there's I think there's that elephant in the room. The club are doing a ton of good stuff. Don't get me wrong, but it's like, everybody's trying to forge out the best club, and and go by, we have the most champs and the most points, and they're making these great wrestlers. These kids wrestle all the time, but I think there's a lot of damage being done along the way. In some areas, not everything. There's a lot of great things going on, and these guys doing the club, but I think everybody do it for the right reasons. But I think there's some things that need some help, some guidance and mentorship along the way that could really, really help a lot of people, athletes, parents, club coaches, and I think that's just mentorship, it's just guidance. Other individuals for these kids to talk to other than mom and dad, I mean, sometimes that's all it is. We're just ears a lot of times, and the things that these kids are capable of so much,
Right.
I mean, they know what to do. They know, they just need an outlet a little bit. They need another voice sometimes, but they really need another outlet, and they need their mom and dad, intentional mom and dad,
Mm-hmm.
not, mom and dad and then mom and dad coach can be really tough, And sometimes we don't know that till it's too late either. But so yeah, I think there's a lot of things there to be discussed, and then there's burnout, I think part of it is how do you know your kids, bro? Are they really burnt out, or are they just is there a struggle, in the
Right.
relationship,
Yeah.
things like that. And so I think it's important, so that's what we're doing, man. I don't think there's a lot of people out there doing what we do. There's a lot of mindset stuff out there, like even Z mindset, wrestling Z mindset. A lot of
Yep.
people putting out their stuff about how to overcome adversity, playbooks and all this stuff. But we're having conversations, you know, we're mentoring kids. We're not psychologists. We're just having conversations about a lot of this stuff. And a lot of it's about just having a positive mindset, but then a vision, like, setting goals, but setting visions. So we get our athletes to create vision boards. And
Okay.
through that, they figure out like why they want to go do things, like what's important to them, not what's important to their coaches or their parents. But if I'm wrestling, like, why am I wrestling? Why is it important to me? And then we have our kids through our program do vision boards, and it gives them, and then they start to understand the meaning of like why they want to go do this or that. Then they put action behind it, but then it's theirs. It's
Mm-hmm.
nobody else's. I think that's a really powerful thing that we do, that a lot of kids, they start to discover themselves. And once they discover themselves and why they want to do things, now they're going to practice because they want to, not because dad, or mom, even though maybe they're not forcing them, but the kid feels like that's the expectation.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a lot of things that come out with just, through mentorship. It's just, again, just having powerful conversations. And sometimes we're just years, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, and I think that's the void that's out there. We're discovering it. I mean, man, there's not a coach we talk to. There's not a coach that doesn't say, hey, talk to our AD, because I think school districts are really struggling with leadership, and they're worried, like, man, like we're losing leaders, and they see a lot of these young kids coming up, and there's some challenges there,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But athletes, like, even you go into schools, like, who can be great leaders in your school districts? Who can make or break a culture? I think your athletes, you get your athletes to be good kids, good leaders, doing the right things. A lot of others will follow suit. They'll have a huge impact on a lot of other kids. But if your athletes, they just got this, they're impactful, they got this power. But if they're not, if they're not good leaders and they're bullies, and they treat people like crap, your culture is going to be like that.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to follow that suit. And it just kind of comes, I think it just comes with the title. It comes with being an athlete, right? You kind of have that responsibility a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's a great thing, but it's a scary thing too if they don't. So that's what we're out there doing, man. And I think, our testimonials have been extremely powerful. The conversations we have, we're all talking about the same thing, but we're all busy and everybody's trying to survive, and it's tough times right now, just in survival. Parents are working their butts off trying to make you gotta be rich to go buy eggs, man, have an egg sandwich anymore, right? I mean,
Right.
times are tough. But yeah, I mean, really, that's what we're out there trying to let people know we're doing. And when we get people to see what we're doing, we have great conversations, and people are wanting to know, how they can get involved, what we can do. And so that's kind of our mission, is to help parents support their athletes. We do that by
Mm-hmm.
supporting the athlete, but we do support the parent too. And we worked with some school districts. We do some speaking engagements, and kind of sometimes we kind of get pulled a lot of different directions. And that kind of started to tell us, like, holy buckets, like there's a lot of people out here looking for this sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But when you try to do everything, you don't get very much done. So we kind of chunked it down to, okay, athletes, like, let's work with athletes, because there's athletes in every school, there's athletes all around. AU, like, it's going to continue to get bigger and bigger. I mean, people are building more clubs every year, right? Kids are starting wrestling earlier and earlier. But actually, I think, look at, we did like, what is it, like 39% of the kids who are doing a sport in middle school are still doing it when they're a senior. Where there's 90% of the kids are participating in a middle school sport, only 39% of those 90% are still doing the sport as seniors. So a lot of kids are quitting sports,
Mm-hmm.
for a lot of different reasons, but sports are so important to your development and your growth, So our mission is, how do we keep kids in sports, Let's help them through, let's guide them through those challenges. We don't want to take challenges away. but how can they have support and grow and begin to see things from a different perspective so they can grow within those challenges rather than like, this sucks, this is hard. Expectations are high. Pressure to win is high. And then they've been doing that since they were 8, 9, 10 years old. And pretty soon it's not very fun anymore. So
Yeah.
that's a lot, you asked,
Mhm.
it's a big question what we do. And we're just trying to be out there and be another voice, I think, for coaches and parents, and fill a void that we think is a big need. And everybody knows it. A lot of people are just afraid to pull the trigger on it, I think, too. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think the other takeaway I have from it, or one of the takeaways is, you take that responsibility kind of off the coaches and the parents. They all, like you said, they already have a lot going on. Coaches are trying to coach and show technique and push these kids, and now they have to kind of mentor them and build their mindset. Like, you can take that piece away to let them focus on other things and what they're really good at. And same with the parents, you take that away and they can just be the parent, or every once in a while, sure, maybe give them some advice, or if you mentor the parents a little bit, they can help along the way. But you provide that stability in,
Yep.
like you're saying, in a very important way that people need it. And so they can focus on something else or what they're good at,
I think happens a lot is parents think that their coaches are mentoring their kids too.
Right.
There's just not a lot of time for it. You know what I mean? Like, you got to
Right.
put time with these kids, and coaches don't have that time. So parents think that their coaches are giving them that mentorship, and maybe they are, but maybe it's only happened with a couple kids, or something like that, right? But a lot of them aren't getting that. And then the parents, here's one of the greatest things I can relate it to. You know, they want to have these, like, who's the athlete's biggest supporters and fans, right? Their parents. And
Yeah.
their parents want them to grow. Their parents got all these things that they want to help guide them on, you know, but that's not the area to do it in, because typically it comes out like, as parents too, and I experienced this as a dad. I'm stressed, and that comes out in my voice. I might not be at my kid. I might be stressed about 5 or 10 other things that I don't want my kids to even know about. But when I talk down and I want to have a great conversation and intentional with my kids, they take it in a totally different way than what I thought I presented it. And it was damaging. And I didn't even know that. And my
Hmm.
wife caught me doing that, at times, like, man, like, you were really like kind of hard on him. I'm like, I was like, that's not what I wanted to be. And one of the greatest things that I really enjoyed about when I was coaching back at Iowa Lakes is I lived 30 minutes from Iowa Lakes. And so I had a 30, 45-minute drive every day. And at first I'm like, oh, this kind of sucks. But
Yeah.
man, it was a time where I could reset. Like, that drive, I could not, when I got home, I wanted to be the dad that my kids needed me to be and wanted me to be, and not bringing stresses back. I had time to, like, just decompress a little bit. And I really started to understand that a lot at that time. And I still, even today, like, I help out at going where my son wrestles, but I'm not the main guy, and I want my kid to be coached by others. He has other mentors in his life that we put in place for that reason, you know. But once you can flip the script and your kids start coming to you and asking you questions and you advice, and that's what we do in the athlete's mentor, like, to help with those relationships. Like, we give kids things to do, and then we actually have them go back and talk to their parents, like, bring up conversations. And wow, like, is that game changing in relationships? Now it's the kid going to you, and even you, like, you even answer questions in a whole different way. You know what I mean? Like, it flips the script big time, and then your
Hmm.
kids, they want to hear what you have to say. Typically, when you take it to the kid, they're kind of like, whatever, and
Hmm.
you think you got your point across, but they didn't listen to anything. It's a big difference.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And that's all. We haven't reinvented the wheel, man. We're not
Hmm.
doing anything that's different. We're just, honestly, we're making them feel valued. Like, that's a big deal. As a parent, your kids should feel that you value them all the time. And when you get on them and you're hard on them, they feel devalued. And I think that's where they turn off.
Hmm.
And when you feel valued, even with our college athletes on this, is like, how do you be a leader? How do you build relationships? Go ask your teammates how they're doing. Ask them for their input into the program. Make them feel value. Now they begin to buy in. Now they'll follow you to the depths of whatever waters you want to lead them to. But you got to make them feel valued. It's no different than with a parent and your kid's relationship. You know, you got to be intentional and make them feel valued.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big part of, where we go with that through the things that we do, and allow parents to be able to do that and let their kids feel like, oh, mom, dad value me, like they're asking me questions, or they're not barking at me on this or that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a game changing in relationships.
Yeah. When did, or how do you, or how did you start to consume this information, and like basically how did you become good at this, I guess is my question, you know?
It's a good question. I don't know if we are good at it, man. I think we're forging a way of just being out there and being people that are doing it, like we're
Mhm.
passionate. I think a lot is through our experiences, like Teresa, my wife Teresa and I, we have failed as parents 100. We've made tons of mistakes, but I think we've reflected on them,
Mhm.
and we've caught each other like, hey, like you were kind of a butthead right there, or you didn't say that right. Or I can tell Stacia didn't hear that, and I think it's been a lot of that reflecting, but just passionate about, man, like there's a need for this, and I think we just genuinely care. And actually, we have a lot of people say like doing, like her being a female and me male, and like doing it together. Like we go talk to these college teams, like even like at wrestling. Some of the college coaches are like, that's awesome, you two together, because it's good for our guys to see husband and wife, or male and female. I mean, it's a different thing, and I think there's power within that. And I think we just give a shit. At the end of the
Yeah.
day, we care and we have great conversations. We're not, we have a program, but we don't sit down here and like, hey, this is what you're gonna do, and when we follow the program, we meet the athletes where they are. So
Mhm.
it doesn't matter where you're at. Like we're just listening, and then we're working on real life adversities that they're going through, and then we ask them questions, and get them to talk to us. They know the answers, like they know things, but they don't know how to see things from different perspectives sometimes. But once they do, and once they start to do some things and they start to talk about some things, they start to get some stuff down on paper and then write in the journal, and they start putting their visions down on paper. Wow, man, like kids are amazing. You know,
Mhm.
they just need to be able to have a way to kind of crack that egg a little bit. And I think just giving them the time, and then allowing the parents to give them the time in the right way changes a lot. So I think we just kind of naturally are passionate about helping kids, see things from different perspectives, understand their visions, and then give them a roadmap and a game plan to put action behind that. And Teresa's really good at that, at being an administrator, just knowing how to ask questions in a way that makes you
Mhm.
think differently. I mean, I learn every day, from her. We learn from our athletes, but those conversations are so powerful. It's almost like an addiction. When you
Mhm. Yeah.
turn the corner and do great things, or a parent calls you, is like, I can't tell you like how different Sam is today. I mean, like how he's playing ball. And it's like everybody's kind of got the question, well, how do you give your kid confidence? Kids struggle with confidence. All athletes struggle. We struggle with confidence as adults.
Yes. Yes.
You know, there's no, I don't know if there's a trick to it. I think it's just getting them to be conscious that I can do things, or I can work through that stuff. And again, feeling valued and a lot of different stuff like that is important. And that's what we do in a nutshell.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, man, we've been again having some great conversations. I'm hoping we're going to announce something really cool here. We're talking to some club coaches, a particular wrestling coach who's that I've been following for a long time, and he's got a new club going, and he's just got those same visions we have. And he's like, dude, we want you to work with all of our athletes, and so we're excited for that. That's going to help us get out there. So again, I think it's just getting out there and letting people know what we do. Um, so we see a big thing here, man. We want to bring on other coaches that do what we do. We can only impact so many people.
Right.
So our goal is to bring in other people into our brand, our organization, and impact as many athletes as we can, to keep as many athletes in the sports, because sports do so much for these kids, in a big way. And we want to keep them in there, grind them through everything. But some of them just need some guidance
Yeah.
that way. So
How do you keep your education on this topic, fresh, and how do you stay on top of things as life is changing, times are changing, you know, where we're at today in life is not where we're going to be at next year, you know? So like, how are you and your wife staying on top of things to still be able to properly mentor your athletes?
Great question. I think us together, it helps as one. I mean, we're always like talking about
True.
things. We have different perspectives that we don't always agree on sometimes, but we don't have somebody talk through that we trust and we love, and so forth. But having conversations, talking with you know what I mean? Like having these conversations, talking to the coaches, different parents, like every day we are learning. We spent a lot of this first part of this 2 years really just like market research. What do parents want? And we ask them, what do you want? Or why did you bring us in? And then talking to whether it's an older coach like my mentors today about what do you think about this, and then hearing the young coaches now. A lot of these college guys are coming out and they're starting clubs, but hearing what their perspective is and what they're seeing and what they think. That's education. That's like ground level out in the field. You know, what are they hearing? What are they seeing? Like, you know, like what can we give you? Like, what do you need in your club? Because all these clubs are a little bit
Mhm.
different. What do you
Yeah.
need? And then if we can't provide that, we don't want to disservice you. But a lot of it's the same. A lot of the same topics and conversations, some different perspectives, and then it don't take much to. Teresa's a big reader. I'm a big kind of a listener to podcast stuff like that. I mean, I think it's just taking in it, sorting through the BS, um, not worrying about what other people think. I think if I told you we start getting some haters out there, then we know we're doing some right things. In the
Yeah.
world now, right? And we tell our kids that all the time, man. You got people that are hating on you. Keep doing what you're doing.
Hmm.
And I'm sure we'll get some of that a little bit in that area, but we're passionate about helping kids and just I think conversations, talking to as many people as possible, has been really impactful on us and educational at the same time because we've kind of like we've pivoted a couple times a little bit for different reasons for what we're hearing. Because again, we totally changed our careers. We left everything, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
we're on a whole new thing. And it's been it's been scary, don't get me
Yeah.
wrong at all. But at the same time, I think if you live it, if you're not scared and you're not pushing and driving at the same time, then you're not doing, you're probably not on the right path. But we just love where we're at and where we're going, and we got big visions to be impactful. And we tell people that. And I think everybody shares that. Everybody does too, especially the sport of wrestling. Or we work with wrestling. With any sport, we've worked with swimmers, softball, baseball, basketball, wrestling. We have a lot of wrestling people because that's kind of where I kind of drift off into a little bit. But we want to help athletes,
Right.
um, reach their potential and be the best version of themselves. And once they start to be the best version of themselves, they overcome a lot of things on their own, and that's pretty cool to see.
Yeah, because I think that was going to be one thing I wanted to ask. I assumed, but I wanted to make you say it was basically you're not strictly wrestling. You will work with athletes. That's why it's the athlete's mentor. It's not the wrestling mentor. It's the
Right.
athlete's mentor because you will work with athletes and schools and whatever sport it is. You're not just pigeonholed to wrestling. You will do it all.
Yep.
Correct? Yeah.
Yep. All athletes are going through a lot of the same things.
Right.
A lot of, it's not just wrestling, that have parents and kids that, are struggling with relationships. It's every sport. AU is growing in a lot of sports, especially softball, baseball, volleyball. So it's any sport. An athlete's an athlete, and the struggles are real. Even non-athletes, and we've done some great school presentations with the whole schools and having an impact anywhere we can. We're kind of focusing again. We chunked down the athletes a little bit, so we're kind of getting pulled a lot of different directions, and
Yeah.
we want to be good at what we do, but we're not trying to, like we're still kind of forging our path to a little bit. Right now, it's a lot of club talk, a little bit. We're talking clubs, and we're honestly looking like there's some clubs that we've talked to, like they're just, I think they're seeing it in a big way. You have families who are really they're wanting to support their athlete, not just in season. And so that and sometimes those are some of the tougher situations that you see. But I think some of these clubs are starting to look and be like, man, like we want to forge champion. We want them to have great fathers, great individuals leave our program. not just great wrestlers or basketball players or softball players, but the struggle's real for any athlete, So
Yeah.
and we don't talk about specific sports, in terms like we work with an athlete. That doesn't change our game plan at all. We're figuring out what's important. What are your visions? And a vision is what do you, when you want to accomplish that, what's it feel like? What's it smell like? Those sort of like let them dig in, and then we ask them why. Why is that important? Why is that important? Pretty soon kids are thinking, and they go to a whole different place. And when that starts to happen, you can almost see these aha moments start to happen with kids. And it just like this. We do it on Zoom. Like we work a lot of kids on Zoom. We're meeting them. We work with athletes. We work with athletes in Illinois and Wisconsin, Iowa. So we don't have to be within a driving meetup. We're doing everything on Zoom anymore. We even got administrators so athletes are busy, right?
Right.
Leave at 6 a.m. They get home at 6, 7 at night. Well, they're tired and they're exhausted. Last thing they want to do is jump on a Zoom call with the Alesches and Athletes Venture at 8 o'clock at night. They're tired and they're not there. So we actually have an educator's letter where they give their educators. A lot of these kids have 30, 45 minutes at school. They're in a study table or something where they can actually study hall. They can spend that time and they're in an educational setting. So they actually jump on with us during the day. And it's awesome. Like we haven't had an educator yet say no, you tell me you guys are learning about leadership. They're learning about how to be impactful. Like administrators love it. They want those individuals, So we haven't had nobody tell us yet get turned out like, no, that's not really, it's not a school thing. They've allowed these kids like in a downtime once a week. That's what we meet with them once a week, basically, if you came in the program at certain levels, and have kids be able to do it during school, which is great because that's where they're in an educational setting. They're not having to get up. We work with some early in the morning, a little bit based on schedules, but that's been awesome to see educators be like, yeah, absolutely, So that's been pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
See that.
I want to ask you about the first presentation you ever did, because I hate thinking back to the first podcast I ever did. I know it was just awful. I'm probably being harder on myself than what it really was. But I want to ask about the first one you ever did, because this is a lot of information and this is a lot of stuff to try to get across. And so, do you remember what that first one was like?
I remember the first school presentation we did in front of in front of a lot of kids, like junior high through high school. Man, I was sweating. I told them I had to have papers because at the same time, like we speak a lot from the heart and we go with the flow. And Teresa, my wife is just smart, man, and she's just a lot more literate than I am. She's an English teacher, like she's always telling me, like, you didn't say that right, or you said, and she just speaks well with kids, and she just stands. She's been an administrator. She's talked with kids, like she knows how to talk with kids to get them to be quiet. You know what I mean, and how to address large things. And me, I'm just like rolling with it. Like I'm more motivating, and I like my tone can go up and down, and I can change. So we work well together with that. But man, I don't remember. I remember having to read some things. Right, I leave and we'd be like, oh, I forgot this, and this. At the end of the day, the kids, they don't know, and I didn't just get comfortable with it. Our very first, like our first master class we did, like we were, that was like trying to think and, and work with her and not forget things because we feel like everything we got to say is important. At the end of the day, we kind of realize it's just like be you, be genuine and bring out the best in yourself. And half the time I forget most of the stuff I talk about, for the most part. we kind of flow with it too. And I think that's a part of who we are, and I think that's something we hear a lot about, is just like, that was awesome. That was powerful. I remember leaving that one school and we walked out and I think it was like an art teacher. He's like, our kids have never been that attentive and that quiet. And I didn't want to say this is our first one we ever did. Because I felt like we bombed it, but Teresa nails it, of course, and brings everybody back around. But I think so I think we have a little bit of a knack for it. I don't think whether it's the first or the 100th, I think you all get, it's kind of like going on the wrestling mat, going to compete, you get a little nervous about it. But at the same time, I think we have fun with it, That's what I love about your podcast. Like I listen to a lot of it. It's just guys, it's fun. It's talking about things, just getting it out there and just enjoying the moment and the impact. So
yeah. how do you, because this can be pretty stressful, the impact you're trying to make, you can really get wrapped up into the athletes and their success and how they're doing. How do you take a step back and just breathe, man? Like, I just feel like you just have no time to just just like be Cody for a minute, you
Yeah.
know?
I think right now we're fortunate with our kids in high school because we get to chase our kids, like our
Yeah.
kids are competing somewhere. So to go watch our kids compete, in a few years when that's over, I know our daughter wants to go play college ball and I don't know what Teague will do, but I love that. Like that's the most like it's stressful, don't get me wrong, but I'm
Mhm.
at such a place of peace watching my kids I know how hard they work. And I think that's what we enjoy as parents. I think that's what we want to get a lot of other parents to just step back and when your kid gets done compete, just tell them how much you loved watching them compete, because that's what it's about, win or lose. And I think we like that. It sucks when they lose, but you got to be the parent that they can come to. But I think that's where we kind of for us, that's my escape. With doing what we do, there's a lot of things in the back end, like tech and all that stuff that I hate doing, and there's a
Mhm.
lot of things we got to do that goes behind the scenes in terms of building our organization and making it something that we want it to be and prepare for growth. Like taxes, I need to get those sorts of things. But so for me, I think coming in like that is the release, like like getting on the calls, like even sometimes I'm rushing, I got to jump on a call, I'm like, okay, am I ready? And I'm like, oh, I don't think I did a good job. But when I leave the calls with kids, and if Teresa's with me, or sometimes we do them together or separate, I'm like, that was so awesome. You know, when kids speak, and it's just there's something to it, man. When they really get thinking about things and they get reflecting on themselves, it is so awesome. And I'm in college. That's kind of like I think I really discovered how awesome that was too, because in college I started bringing young coaches with me where I give them control of the room, and I did most of my coaching was in my office, building relationships, doing guidance with these young men and outside the wrestling room. And I think that's where I really began to just kind of understand that and enjoy it, but realize the impact was really in my office most of the time, you
Mhm.
know, carried it into the room. So for me, I think that it is kind of that it's almost like doing what I do is that release. It's like I have to go back to the real world when I get
Mhm.
off my meetings, and stuff. But having our kids, that's I mean, that's awesome, and I want parents to really feel what we feel all the time. A lot of times it's too damn stressful,
Mhm.
and make it that way. And it's hard to watch your kids compete, especially in wrestling, like it about kills you as a parent.
Yes.
At the same time, it doesn't have to be like that either. You know,
Yeah.
your kid, you know, they only know what you know. Like they only see what you provide them, and how you handle things. And we screw it up all the time. Teresa and I do. We talk all the time. Like we tell them, but if we do that, like like we tell our kids understand that. We tell them that. You know, and I think that's a pretty cool thing. We're pretty proud of our relationships with our kids. Teresa and I are not that again, but we're only there because we've failed multiple times. But
Yeah.
that's the way of it. So
Mhm.
we like my kid, Teague and I, we like to go golfing, we like to go hunting, we like to, and I want those things to always be the number one things in our life, not what he did at a wrestling tournament or a baseball game. Same thing with our daughter. It's like those are great things and those are going to build you the person you are. But that's not what make mom and dad proud. The work you put into it, that makes us proud. Like that's awesome. But let's go on vacation, let's go
Mhm.
hunt, go golfing. Like those are things that are important.
Yeah.
Um,
How do you get ready for a call? I know we're pushing up against the time here, but I just want to ask real quick, how do you prepare for your call when you're like going through a hectic time? You know, life happens. All right. And now, but you can't control that. And now you have this call with this athlete that you have to be on for. Like you have to be there. You have to be ready, prepared. You have to talk to this athlete, and shit just hit the fan at home. But now you have to hop on in 5 minutes with this athlete. So, how do you kind of get your mind right and prepared for this conversation that you're about to have with an athlete when things are
yeah.
going awry?
Just like we work with parents on is removing emotion. remove emotion from the conversations. When I sit down with our athletes, it's all about them. My life doesn't matter. How are you doing? We start off every call with gratitudes. So, and we're usually like Teresa and I'll be the first ones to say. So every call on our athletes know we start off every call with, what's your win or your gratitude for the day or since the last time we saw you. When we start, and I don't care how bad of a day I have, I got something in my day that I'm thankful for, that I have gratitude for. And that's how we start off every call. And I think that's the power that starts off all of our calls. We've done that from the very beginning. And then our kids, our athletes, when they start off with a gratitude, sometimes it's a challenge for them, but they got one, and I don't care what it is. It could be the sun shining today. It's not raining for the third day in a row, or I got up and I got to school on time, or whatever it may be. Or sometimes it's like I don't have school day. Like that's their biggest win of gratitude, But we start off every call like that. And then that just leads into, how are you doing? What are your current challenges? This is what we worked on from last time. How's that going? And and we talk. And every time they have to repeat their visions. Every time like they set up their visions of what they are, and we use them like we talk about affirmations and visions and manifestation. The more times you're putting positive thoughts in your head, then you don't got room for negative thoughts. So that's kind of a part. That's really our plan on our program is working on positive thoughts, visions, and then they have to do their gratitudes and wins every time, and they got to repeat their visions to us every time. And pretty soon, like, it's funny to hear them speak the first time you meet with them to when we get towards the end of the program and how they word things differently and the growth that they have and just how they speak is so awesome. So much growth happens. And it's not from us doing anything that you wouldn't do with them, but we're giving them that time. And, but like I said, you're all in on them. It starts with wins and gratitudes every call. And then it's just focusing on what's going on in their life and letting them talk. And we guide them through it. And then honestly, like that kind of goes back to that earlier question. Like, that's my piece. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not worried about any of my stuff. Those moments. And I don't know, you might have unlocked that. That might be why I enjoy it so much. We're just talking about it with you. I'm going to tell you, every time Teresa and I do one together, which is often when we can, sometimes we got split up or whatever, but we get up and every time, I swear to God, we look at each other every time, we're like, that was awesome. Like so-and-so is like, wow. Like we're just constantly amazed at the growth these kids have, because sometimes we started off early on, like Teresa's big in curriculum, like being an educator and so forth. She does lots of the curriculum. I'm like, well, we can give them this much stuff. Like this is too much. Like if I remember being them, I'd be like, oh my gosh, like you're killing me with all this stuff.
Yeah.
But if I always leave thinking, oh my god, and we don't have a lot of curriculum. I think the way we present it, it's just that the kids are capable of so much more than we give them credit for. And when they come out with that, they start doing. You just give them the time to release. Man, they do some awesome things. So I've learned more probably from the athletes than they've learned from us. I think what we give them is time and an outlet. The gratitude's a huge thing. I think some kids, our college guys and gals, sometimes, especially the guys like wrestlers, like 4-year program, especially, they kind of like, I feel like they think this is corny, but man, once they get going, again, they take off and they got so much impact. I think that's what we tell a lot of we work with the athletes. Just tell them you impact people every single day, whether you like it or not, whether it's positive or negative. Like you impact somebody every single day. I think when they start understanding that and they're conscious of that, and then all of a sudden now they're intentional with their impact. Wow, some really cool things happen within cultures too.
Yeah.
We love that stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff.
What's the future look like? What's the goal here for you? You ask the kids what their goals are, so let me ask you, what is sort of the future and the goals of the athlete's mentor, maybe short term and long term?
Yeah. Continue to just get our brand out there so people know what we do. I think that's just the hardest part. And a lot of that's just obviously in the world of sports. I mean, referrals, like that's really powerful. But I think the more people we tell, there's so much stuff out there, too. If you look at like we're on social media trying to do stuff, but there's also a lot of other things out there that you just don't know what's right. So just growing little by little, we want to get to a point where like in this next year, we can start adding to our team. I think for us, it's being as impactful as many people as we can, athletes, but it's adding to our team to bring in other individuals like us that we can train in our program and what we do, and bring what we bring, but represent the athlete's mentor and continue to build, because there's new athletes coming up all the time, right? So it's not like, this. I think this is the thing that will always be there. Especially like the AU world is tremendously growing, right? I mean, kids are starting doing sports more and younger than ever. It's always kind of been a thing in wrestling, but now you're other sports, like kids are, playing baseball and softball really early on, And I really think there's also a level, like, we're kind of like in that, 10's pretty young, 11, 12 years old, because think we not that we're going deep, but it's like you need to be able to reflect a little bit, and it should be all fun, but a little bit anyway. It should continue to be fun, but so yeah, it's growing, and someday we want to have a, Matrice talks about it, time like our big goal, like a barn, like a retreat center, a barn where people can bring their teams through, and be there for a couple days or a day and go through stuff and just work on leadership. We believe leadership is a big thing that's, I don't know, every generation lacks it more and more, but leadership is powerful. How you impact others is you just need more kids to be conscious of that, I think. So, and I think school districts are, really, really foaming at the mouth to have more leaders and leadership. And so things like that, we got big visions like that, and to just grow, I think grow our brand where other people are passionate about what we do, and they want to, they want to do that. And there's a lot of coaches out there, I think that have great abilities to do that and go through experiences and want to impact kids. And what better way to impact them than just to mentor them? We we pulled our 200 and some athletes that we worked with this past fall, and the college athletes, and just asked them. 98.9% of them said mentorship was impactful in them in some way. And those are the ones that want to do something in college, right? So I think that's really important. The ones that don't go to college, I think a lot of them lack that mentorship. Somebody in their life outside their parents that was there to mentor them. But the college athletes all said like mentorship was a huge, but they all had somebody else in their life besides their parents that was very influential to them, that helped them with their struggles. And I think that was, for us, that was like, wow, like, working with kids, is really important. Like we need to provide more, make that more of an awareness. So I think bringing the awareness of mentorship and how important it is, is a really big mission for us. So, how do you do that? How do you know? We don't know, man. Get out there and get your feet dirty, and impact as many people as you can. Let other people talk about that impact. Is how we're growing, and but this is our baby, and we're not going anywhere. We're going to grow it, and again, the more people we see, the more visions we've been sharing with other people. Like everybody have the same vision, and get more people to pull the trigger and step back and bring it in. We need to grow. I think like talking to people who have, I think one thing that has scared us is some people might not be able to get the kid, everybody come from different circumstances in life. And so to get people that like scholarships, like for kids to be able to come in and take our program that can't do it financially, that don't have that, disposable income at home with parents. A lot of people are struggling. That's a lot of people. And that's what's awesome about this one club that we're about to partner with is they want no kid left behind. So he's out there finding those funds. And so finding people, and I think there's a lot of athletes out in this world that want to give. So how can we build our scholarship program so we can give scholarships to kids and they'll come to the program and have mentors in their life, anything we can do to do that is we're open to it, and we're building at the same time. So,
yeah. Well, the world could never have too many leaders, and where can people find you? I'll put a blurb at the beginning too. But where can people find you, get a hold of you, search you, whatever, like, if somebody wants the athlete's mentor to come to their school or where do they go?
So www.theathletesmentor.com is our website. That's got all of our stuff on there. We're on Facebook. Just look at the Athletes Mentor. Social media, we're on there as much as we can. So that's, and email us at hello@theathletesmentor. And then, that's kind of, where we're at for the most part in terms of reaching out to us and finding us. The website will give you all of our contact information, email, and all that stuff is probably the best place to go to. But if you can message us on any social media, whether it's Instagram or Facebook and those things, there's places you can message us on there. So, and Cody and Teresa Alesch, you look us up, you'll find us in some aspect, also. But that's where we are, and find us, look us up, and we want to talk to you. And that's what we love, having just a conversation first, seeing where you're at as a school, where are you at as a parent, where's your athlete at. We always have it's always that session first was a one-on-one with us, and let's see where you're at, and then let's see if we can help you.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of the Let's Talk Wrestling podcast. Special thanks to my guest Cody Alesch for taking the time to sit down and chat with me. Cover art created and designed by Kristen Gill. Please feel free to rate, comment, and subscribe to this podcast. And you can also check me out on Twitter, Instagram, and my Facebook page to hear more of my content. And don't forget, head to my website, letstalkwrestlingpodcast.my.canva.site. And as always, be sure to tune in to hear the next guest on the Let's Talk Wrestling podcast. Take care. See you next time.